Score is the cost estimate of all of this. Joining us now for more, Leslie Marshall, syndicated radio host and Fox News contributor, and Jamie Weinstein, political commentator and host of the podcast, The Jamie Weinstein Show. To you first, Jamie. I mean, there was a lot of pomp and circumstance and a lot of high fives yesterday in the Rose Garden when President Trump was there with the House Republicans who got this thing passed. But it's far from a done deal, and even Republicans in the Senate aren't necessarily on board with what the House has done. Was that celebration premature?
Well, you know, it's certainly a good day for Donald Trump. He got through the bill through the House, but I'm reminded of what Winston Churchill once said. This is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end. It is perhaps the end of the beginning. There's a long way to go here in the Senate. There's a lot of ideological divisions, even among Republicans. There's Republican senators who are up in 2018 who are afraid to upset the apple cart and might get tagged if, this bill creates some losers, as every bill always does, even if it's better for most people. So there's a long way to go in the Senate. And then even if you have to move left in order to get some Democrats on board, what happens when you bring it back down to the House for a vote? Will the Freedom Caucus stay with you? So there's a long way to go before this process ends. So yes, yesterday was good for Donald Trump, but this is far from over.
Leslie, Democrats have been critical of this process, saying that Republicans are sort of heading down a blind alley. They have no idea what this legislation is that they have passed. But couldn't the same thing be said of the original Obamacare legislation? Nobody had any idea what was going to come out of all that.
Oh, I don't disagree with you at all, John. And I was against that in the beginning. I'm against it then. I'm against now, pushing through anything that's going to affect so many millions of people's lives. Not just now, but think about anybody born in the future with a pre-existing condition as an example of that. One of the things that I like that's going on in the Senate is I'm seeing far fewer Republicans willing to walk the plank, if you will, which I think they did in the House. I'm seeing Democrats and Republicans saying, look, we want to work together, because there is one thing Democrats and Republicans in the Senate agree on, and that's what the president originally promised, which was nobody would lose their coverage. Everyone with pre-existing conditions would be covered now and going into the future, and premiums would be lowered. Can't do that without a CBO score. And quite frankly, you obviously don't even know in this current form if any of that's in there, and some empty promises perhaps from the president, I don't think should have got the votes of some of those in the GOP in the House.
Yeah, Jamie, the president was out there promising premiums are going to go down. A lot of people might wonder if that's like saying, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with the debate here on both sides. They talk to the American people like we're children. On the Republican side right now, they're basically saying everything's going to be great. There's going to be no losers, only winners. That's impossible with this type of legislation. Even if it's a net benefit, there's going to be a lot of losers, and they ought to tell the American public who's going to be the losers and who's going to be the winners, because that's the adult way to do this. You can't have a Pollyannish bill. But on the Democratic side, they act as if Obamacare, there were no losers at all. This is all great. And there's nothing to correct. And by the way, health care is a right, even if they can't define how that's the case if you can't pay for it. So I really think that we American people are owed a more serious conversation by both Republicans and Democrats on a serious issue like health care.
Well, and it's such a conundrum, Leslie. As you well know, health care becomes a very personal issue, and yet it is so big. They are trying to design this huge setup that's going to handle 1/6 of our economy, and yet individual people's lives.
This is part of the problem, and I do agree with Jamie. Well, first of all, Medicare, Social Security, those are government, funded programs that a lot of people don't seem to balk about. And I don't see left or right anybody in Congress giving those checks back now or when they retire. Look at what happened with health care. One of the reasons we needed the reformation is because the emergency rooms were being just crammed. We didn't have enough, and we still don't have enough health care providers to take care of that ever-growing senior population, and we do get sicker as we get older. And this is problematic because this bill does not address that. And going forward, I fear that we're going to be going right back to the beginning of why we needed the reformation in the first place. And I know that's very troubling for those in the medical community, which is why so many organizations like the AMA, the AARP, are against this.
Leslie Marshall and Jamie Weinstein, we have to leave it there. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.